welcome back to Guitar Geek-orama episode 6. Today we're looking at playing our minor pentatonic scale in a different position. We're going to play in the key of A and a couple of other keys. Last episode we looked at bend and vibrato. This episode we're adding in a couple of extra expressive techniques. We're going to look at hammer-ons and pull-offs. Okay, first of all, let's zoom in and have a look at moving our scale position from the 12th fret down to the 5th fret. Okay, our basic minor pentatonic scale shape that we used before up at the 12th fret, we've moved it down so that our root position now is the 5th fret. So my first finger is lining up on the 5th fret of the E string for an A note. Here's the shape, nice and slow, so that you can be reminded how it looks. Now you will notice that in the middle of the neck the frets are slightly wider than they are up at the 12th position, so you might need to use different fingers to stretch to grab different notes. I'm using one finger per fret. So here's the scale shape, nice and slowly so that we can hear each one. So in terms of fret numbers, we've got the 5th fret, the 8th fret, onto the next string the 5th fret and the 7th fret. Next string, 5th fret, 7th fret, next string, 5th fret, 7th fret, and the next string, 5th fret, 8th fret, and on the highest string, 5th fret and 8th fret. Now we don't always have to use our little finger to reach up to this 8th fret. It's quite a weak finger, and when we're doing bends and vibrato or slides, we might want to substitute for our 3rd finger, so I could stretch up and grab that fret. Right, let's do that one more time. Look at the note names. Okay, so the note names we're looking at in this 5th position, we've got an A, a C, a D, an E, a G, and an A. It's an octave higher, and it will go through that way. So we've got a C, D, E, G, A, and we can reach all the way up to that C note on the 8th fret of the E string. So let's run that scale up and down just to get used to the pattern so you can see it. First I'll do it with the one finger per fret idea. Then I'll do it with my ring finger reaching up for the other note. Now you might want to do that because when you start to bend notes, it's a little bit difficult to do that with your little finger. It takes a lot of effort. So I might want to reach up and grab that 8th fret with my 3rd finger. Okay. Now the advantage of this is we've moved the scale shape from the 12th fret down to the 5th fret, so now we can play in the key of A. This is our A note. And if we're playing a blues or any kind of rock vamp, usually we're going to use the A minor pentatonic if the song is in the key of A. We can also move that to any different position we wanted to. So for example, if we know that this note at the 3rd fret is a G, we could play the same scale shape, just allowing for the different fret numbers, and we would be playing in the key of G. Alright, so we're looking at a couple of new techniques. Nothing too groundbreaking, but quite useful to get an expressive element into your playing. We've already looked at bends and vibrato. Let's have a look at this next technique here. Okay, I've got my first finger on the 5th fret of the G string, which gives us a C note. And that's part of that A minor pentatonic scale. I'm going to use my 3rd finger to reach up and play the 7th fret on the same string. So there's my two notes, a C and a D. But what I can do, instead of picking each note, I can pick the first note and interrupt the string to make the second note sound. So I didn't pick that second note. This is what's called a hammer-on. Now at first it's going to be difficult to get this to sound nice and loud, but what we're aiming for is that the pick note and the hammer note is going to have the same kind of volume. And you really have to be quite quick. It really is a kind of a hammer action to get that finger to hit onto the string just behind the fret. We're aiming for the same kind of position, but as close as you can get to the fret wire, you're going to get a clearer kind of hammer-on sound. So let's have a try at that a couple of times. And don't worry if at first you're getting a kind of a very low sound. Just try and focus that energy in that finger and really interrupt the string. The string's already vibrating. All you need to do is interrupt it and pick up the energy into the other finger. Okay, the other half of this technique, that hammer-on, is the pull-off. So as soon as this finger lands, you can pull that finger away and down, and you'll get another note to sound. So as soon as I pick this note and hammer on, I can also pull down and away and get a pull off. So this is a kind of a complementary technique. They work together. So what we're aiming for basically is this. And I'm sure you've heard that kind of sound before, and that's how you get those notes to sound so rapidly, is that you're not picking each note, so you don't really have to coordinate the right and left hand. It's good to stay in time with the music, but it's all happening in your left hand. So let's just try that a couple of times. Now let's have a look. What I want to do, if you just zoom up really close on my fingers, I'm going to pick that first note just to get the string ringing, but after that I'm not picking anything. I'm hammering on, and then as I pull this finger away, it's slightly down. And I want to make sure that this finger hasn't moved. It's holding that note so that it will sound when this finger pulls off of the string. Watch that carefully. Now if we repeat that motion, we'll get that hammer-on sound. Yeah? In terms of a phrase, it does give us a nice kind of quite a rapid phrasing that we can use. This works on all the strings, so if we moved it down to another string, it works across larger intervals. So if we went up to our B string and we were doing that 5th and 8th fret, again I would hesitate to use my little finger. That takes a little bit of practice, but if you use your 3rd finger and you can make that stretch, it's the same principle. Now there are a lot of different licks that we can get that use combinations of this kind of ideas. So here's one. And you can see the potential there is for playing like quite a rapid succession of notes, and you know, it sounds good, it sounds kind of interesting to throw that in the middle of your phrasing. Yeah, so it's a little bit of a kind of a stunt phrase, if you like. Now what we're aiming for when we're doing this hammer on and pull off is to make sure that the notes are ringing nice and clear. So you are probably going to have to spend a little bit of time sitting there and making sure also that you're using the tip of this finger to mute the next string along. For example, if I don't watch out for my muting, very quickly it will get out of control. You can hit the other strings are starting to ring. So I might use my picking hand and my thumb just resting lightly on the bass string, so the E, A and D string, so that they don't ring. Especially if we're dealing with lots of distortion, you might find that this hammer action will set all the strings ringing. So I don't want that. You don't have to use your thumb, you could use the palm of your hand, just as long as you're not interrupting the string that you're hammering and pulling off of. And zooming in on my left hand, just like everything we do on guitar, we want to make sure that we're being quite precise and that we're not wasting energy. We also want to make sure that I'm using the pad of this finger just under here, this fingertip. It's just resting against that B string anyway, so it's stopping it ringing. I might also use the very tip of the finger to brush up against this string to stop that ringing. But mostly what I'm looking for is that this finger is landing very precisely so it doesn't set the other strings ringing. Now, just looking further down the road, you're not limited to this set of notes. You know, we're playing within this scale. But what we might want to do eventually is start working on different techniques and using lots of fingers for hammer-ons and pull-offs. For example, a little run like this, we might do a chromatic note in between the notes of the scale. So something like this. So I'm picking the first note, hammering on and hammering on again. And I can reverse that. If I do that fast, yeah, and that might sound nice and interesting as a phrase. You know, you can get a nice flurry of notes with just a minimum amount of picking work, and you can keep it sounding quite interesting. Okay, the second technique that we're introducing is slides, which are pretty self-evident. You can see how that works. One thing that's really important to note is consider where your target note is. If my target note is this A, I want to land on this finger, probably, because then it's inside the scale shape. So what I'll do is I'll move this finger back to, say, this G note, and then slide from that fret. So I'll pick that note first. When it's ringing, slide up to the next note. I'm not taking pressure off the string. Now you've got to really get used to this because it's kind of an unusual feeling at first. If you hold too tight, it's quite difficult to move. If you let go, by the time you get to the next note, you won't have a note left. So you want to have the note ringing and just slide your finger along to get the next note to sound. So this kind of slur or slide really helps to add an expressiveness to the playing. And again, start inside the scale. And you can, of course, do it backwards as well. When we start to put it inside our phrasing, it really makes a big difference. We can add that all together. Okay, I'm going to try a little example, put some phrases together with the backing track. Perhaps I'll do a phrase and then you can copy that phrase and see if we can get some of these techniques thrown into the mix. Here we go. Give that a try. Let's make it a little harder. Okay, let's try and make that into a slightly longer phrase. So you've got a slide in and a slide out of the phrase. Okay, here we go, some hammer-ons. When you get comfortable at that, give that a try and see if you can do it double time. To build up to that, but got some phrases there. Give that a try. Let's try that half time. Now, once you're comfortable with a lot of these techniques, see if you can throw them into your own playing. As always, you can go and follow the link to the backing track, which is down below, and just play along and try and incorporate the hammer-ons, pull-offs, bends and vibrato, and put that into phrases that make sense musically. As always, you can check out Eldritch Guitars down below. Go and have a look. You can go on our Facebook page. You can like and subscribe. You can also click through to the other videos and the other backing tracks and have a play along. And I'm being told something else. What was that? Did I say
you did it.
I did it. Awesome. I did it for once and then ruined it. All right, keep playing.